Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando for Knightline the morning after. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action. Once again, that's Knightline the morning after, every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando or TuneIn Radio. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome to Knightline Extra on the award-winning Knightline Sports Network.
What's going on, Night Nation? Welcome to another edition of Knightline Extra. This is the Tulane week preview. I am Adam Eaton, and you're listening to me on the Knightline Sports Network. On this episode, we will give you a complete breakdown of UCF in Tulane being played this Saturday at Tulane. First time these teams have matched up since 2016, so it should be a fun one. Here are the particulars that you need to know about. So the game is a 12 p.m. Eastern, but an 11 a.m. local kick. So an early riser for the Knights. Hopefully that early wake-up call doesn't get us off to a sluggish start. We've all seen how that goes. Hopefully they're fired up. If you can't make it down to New Orleans, which is probably a damn shame because it sounds like it'll be a good time down there, you can check the game out on CBS Sports Network. Be prepared for like 6 hours of commercials, though, because that's what they do on CBS Sports Network. Coming to the game, Tulane is 6-4. They're coming off of a 29-21 loss at Temple. Obviously, UCF is coming into this game at 7-3, and they're coming off of their bye week. Obviously, for UCF, the bye week comes at an appropriate time after a tough one at Tulsa. The team has had a week to regroup. Coach Heupel's had a week to get the staff and the team back focused. Some good news to report out of this. It sounds like Greg McCrae will be a go, and so we will have our leading rusher from the 2018 season back in the backfield to join both Otis and AK and even Bentavious Thompson as well. So good news that we'll get Greg McCrae back. Also good news, Coach Heupel talked a lot in his press conferences this week about really trying to dial in on what's happening with the team and really trying to get some things ironed out. Obviously some vague stuff when you talk about Coach Heupel, but I think the three areas that hopefully they worked on this week: turnovers, penalties, and offensive line play. So it should be interesting to see how UCF responds back-to-back road games. And so obviously the bye week in between, but on the road again after, what we've had 3 tough road performances so far to date. So it could be a tough one. Tulane has a really interesting, really cool on-campus stadium. And I've got JP from fearthewave.com. He'll join me in a little bit. He's a Tulane insider. He'll give you some insight on the stadium and kind of what to expect, the scene down there in New Orleans as well, too. So, again, make sure you get in front of your TV or get down to New Orleans Saturday, 12 Eastern, 11 local time kickoff for UCF Tulane. Should be a good one. Coming up next, though, we'll give you more info on Tulane. You'll also hear from Tulane coach Willie Fritz himself, and UCF Mike joins me for 5 things you need to know. All that coming up next on Knightline Extra.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline and Knightline Postgame Live. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
All right, so Tulane this Saturday. It's been a minute since we've had Tulane. 2016, last time these teams faced off. So a lot has transpired in both sides of the game, if you will. And so to learn more about what we're facing this weekend, happy to have JP from fearthewave.com. You can also find them at Fear the Wave blog on Twitter. probably the premier site for all things Tulane sports. Those guys do a really nice job with everything on their coverage. So happy to have you on the show, man. Thanks for joining us.
Well, we really appreciate that, and I agree with you. Tulane and UCF have not seen each other in football in a minute, but this year, obviously, UCF is about to come to Yulman Stadium, and then Tulane has back-to-back road games at UCF the next 2 years, which is a little bit weird, right?
Yeah, this new AAC scheduling model with 11 teams. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the formulas they're putting in place there. I think there's probably still a lot to be unpacked with that.
Well, I said this before. I'm like, obviously Orlando, great town to come visit, but real nice the AAC to give us back-to-back road games at UCF instead of like East Carolina or Tulsa or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what Oresco's doing sometimes, but hopefully he's watching the game this Saturday, which should be a good one. Again, it's been a minute since we've played each other, and so let's catch up on Tulane in the season to date so far. 6-4 on the year. Some tough losses. I think they played Auburn really well. So how would you kind of describe the year so far for Tulane?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to intro it. I would actually say Tulane is at a very interesting spot in its development. And I'm talking about that as like a re-evolution of this Tulane football program. For UCF fans who remember some of the Tulane teams of years past, which I will charitably call the Dark Ages, Tulane really from its undefeated season in 1998, when the Green Wave finished the season number 7 in the AP poll, it got boxed out of the BCS. Kind of a narrative that shouldn't be dissimilar to a UCF fan. From really now, Tulane went through this prolonged, pretty dark time for the football program. But of course, 4 years ago, in comes Willie Fritz, who is a successful head coach at Georgia Southern, just a successful program builder. And now fast forwarding to today, Tulane is going to be headed to back-to-back bowl games for the first time since 1979 and 1980. With that being said, what we've seen is that Tulane has done a really nice job, especially at home and against some of the lower teams on the schedule, but really hasn't had that marquee win against a top-tier AAC team like a UCF. So while Tulane is not going to win the West Division, I think there's a lot to play for, and I think that the program has a lot of respect for UCF and that this would be a very meaningful game.
So when Tulane's rolling, and they're right, you guys have quite a weapon on offense. Justin McMillan accounts for a big chunk of the offense. Obviously, he's the quarterback, so in the passing game, but he's also a pretty big part of the running game as well. What kind of player is Justin? I guess what does he do really well, and what are the things that maybe he struggles with?
Well, I'll even take a little bit of a step back, because one of the big things that Tulane has been pretty poor on in the modern era has been on the offensive side of the ball. We have a new offensive coordinator this year who is Will Hall, very, very respected guy, and he's elevated Tulane to a top 25 offense according to the SP Plus stats. To answer your question, I think what the clear strength of this Tulane team is running the football. Whether you're looking at the arsenal of, and I'm not kidding about this, 6 running backs who you can expect to see touches, but also Justin McMillan. And a big part of Coach Fritz's offensive philosophy is that when you have a running quarterback, that adds another player into the offense that a defense has to account for. Now, I would say on the plus side, when he gets going, he makes some really good reads running the football. But I think the big challenge that we've seen when Tulane has been less successful, that if I were a Knights fan, I would be anticipating and hoping for, is that when teams have successfully shut down the run, which is something Temple did really well last week, it really puts a lot of pressure on Justin McMillan, who frankly doesn't have great pass protection, and passing hasn't been his strength. So when that running game gets going, it lets him get pretty comfortable and he can make some good passes. But when he's under a lot of pressure and handing the ball off isn't a great option, it really changes the complexion of this team. And that would be how I would differentiate between some of the really good games for Tulane this season and some of the ones where they've been struggling a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, you're not kidding about a stable of running backs. They got, if I count here right, they got 6 running backs who've got more than 40 carries in the season. 2 of those guys, though, Darius Bradwell and Corey Dauphine, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, both had injuries. Do you have any update on if they're expected to play this upcoming Saturday?
Those guys are both expected to go. Darius Bradwell is kind of your consistent do everything back. He's a bit of a bulldozer. Corey Dauphine is a former 4-star transfer from Texas Tech, and he holds, I believe, the record for the 200 in Texas high school track. And as you can guess, that man is fast. And he's the guy where if you hit him on a screen or you get him off the edge and somebody misses a tackle, he just breaks away on these 60 or 70-yard runs. Both of those guys are going to be in play, but kind of an undiscovered talent, if you will, or at least a younger guy who hadn't had his moment yet. But when those two guys were injured in the middle part of the season, came to the forefront a little bit more is Cam Carroll, who's a true freshman. And he shares a little bit of DNA with Bradwell, I would say. He's another guy who, especially in the red zone, where Tulane's red zone offense has been excellent, he's the guy, when you've got that 3rd and 3 on the goal line, you want him to have the ball. And he's been very effective in that role this year.
What about the passing game? So Darnell Mooney, Jalen McCleskey, and Amari Jones seem to be the top targets. What are the strengths of that receiving core?
I'd agree with you. And I think the thing is that at the top of that depth chart, those are experienced guys. Darnell Mooney is a Tulane senior. He's been effective his entire career. Jalen McCleskey, he's actually an Oklahoma State transfer. He's, I believe, number 2 in historical receptions for Oklahoma State. He transferred. His father is on the coaching staff at Tulane, and he wanted to play at home for his final season. And then Amari Jones, who's actually a running back, but he's got that kind of dynamic hybrid role where we see him involved in the passing game. I think all 3 of those guys are certainly playmakers, and they've all had memorable plays this year. McCleskey's kind of famous one was earlier in the season on Thursday Night Football. He was the one who had I believe a 55-yard reception to beat Houston as time expired.
Sure.
So they're all dangerous players. I think it always really starts with McMillan, and what I can say is he's a tough guy, and he's coming off, I would argue, maybe his worst game at Tulane from this last start against Temple. He's done a good job of shaking off some performances like that, and I would say that he's got the weapons in terms of those receivers, in terms of guys he can throw at. For him, it's all about, can he get the pass protection from the offensive line, and can we establish a running game that just gives him the ability to get comfortable in the pocket and make good throws. When he does that, he's an effective passer too, and I see that as a huge key of the game against a talented defense like UCF.
Switching to the defensive side of the ball, one of the names that kind of jumps out when you look at the stat sheet and even some of the film I was able to look at is a guy named P.J. Hall. What can you tell us about P.J. and sort of the season he's had so far?
I like that call out. I think there's some guys in the secondary who, because the secondary has had some more struggles this year. I'd say the defensive line is really the core of this defense. P.J. Hall is an excellent player, and I would also add Keys, who is our cornerback, who he just accepted an invite to the Shrine Bowl. He has some NFL potential. Those are 2 guys who definitely are playmakers that we have in the secondary. And also just to zoom in at another guy that I would watch. I mean, we know what UCF can do on offense. Some of the guys in the defensive line just have a ton of talent. Patrick Johnson he was the AAC preseason defensive player of the year to Phil Steele. But we actually have a sophomore named Jeffrey Johnson, they call him the Big Easy. I mean, he is a big dude at nose tackle. And when he can really stay in the game for a long time, he can really block things up in the middle part of that defense. So I think for UCF, I think the big thing is managing to execute the tempo well. I think trying to tire down this Tulane defense and get a quick start early will be really important. That's my perspective, at least.
Yeah, what kind of speed does Tulane have on the back end? Obviously, UCF will trot out a bunch of track athletes and obviously the tempo from that perspective. What kind of speed do they have on the back end?
This is definitely the fastest Tulane team that we've seen in a few years. And I mean, this is true not just on defense, but on offense especially. And I'll talk a little bit about that because it's just interesting. For anyone who's into triple option football or knows about Coach Fritz, he comes from Georgia Southern. And what's interesting is that within that style of football, part of your overall strategy is that by running the ball effectively, you're reducing the number of possessions. And ultimately, the hope is that a team like UCF or any other kind of team that runs tempo is going to be limited. We're going to give them fewer possessions to touch the football. Tulane has totally overhauled that system this year. And they're not – I won't go on and act like we're like some Big 12 offense right now. But Tulane's offense is playing with a lot more tempo than we've seen before. I mean, the example I'll give, and I'm sure UCF fans get mad at this when they see it, when we saw some Temple guys getting, quote-unquote cramps in 35-degree weather, you just didn't used to see that with Tulane football. But, they're capable of getting to the line and running plays, and especially when the offense is going well, they want to move.
Yeah, defensively, I mean, Tulane's pretty solid. I mean, giving up 368 yards a game, holding opponents to 25 points a game. That's a pretty solid defensive effort. One stat that does jump out, so Tulane is -3 in the turnover margin. Obviously, I know turnovers aren't all created equal, but I guess how have you seen the team sort of prioritize taking care of the football here over the last couple of weeks?
It's interesting, and I would say that's one of the things that has there's a lot of areas where I would argue that Tulane went 7-6 last year and won the Cure Bowl. This year they're at 6-4. And some people will look at that and say, okay, well, these teams are the same. They're not the same. Tulane is a better team this year than last year. They played a tougher schedule. But with that being said, I would very much agree with you that the turnovers have been an issue. That's primarily been driven by two things. Number one, in the passing game, McMillan, especially in these first halves on the road, has made some less than ideal decisions that have led to coughing up the football early. That's a big reason why Tulane has fallen behind in games like Temple and Navy, where I think a lot of Tulane fans feel they should have won both of those games. But then the flip side of that, when you look at turnover margin, is, what is your defense bringing to the table? And I think they've been effective at bending but not breaking, but at the same time, they haven't been as effective at bringing in some interceptions and things like that. There is a little bit of a luck element, but I would say that if Tulane's secondary especially can find some success, that would be a big factor and certainly something you want to see against a quality team like UCF.
One of the cool things about building a program, and one of the things I really liked when I looked into Tulane this year is the new stadium, so Ullman Stadium, which you referenced earlier. UCF played there in 2015, but it was a winless season for us. So I'm not sure how many fans went out for that game based on our record. So a lot of fans, obviously a pretty close trip to from Florida. A lot of fans getting down there for some parties on Friday and Saturdays. What can they expect out of Ullman Stadium? It looks like a pretty cool little venue to watch a football game.
You guys are gonna have fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'll shout out a couple things for anyone going. Tulane is doing some things this year. Now I'm not gonna go crazy here and act like you guys are going to play at Penn State or something, but Tulane has started to see an uptick in attendance for the first time in many years, and it's not where it needs to be yet, but it's trending up. And I think one of the reasons, aside from having a successful team, which is great, and the most important thing is that they use the fan-friendly pricing model. I think it's $3 beers and $2 hot dogs. So if you're in there, man, have a good time. But the other cool thing is that it's an on-campus stadium around Tulane. Obviously, there's going to be a pretty cool tailgate environment. That's always a good party, which is going to happen right around the stadium on Tulane's campus. There are a number of bars in Uptown. Now, I know it's an early game, so that's probably not going to be as much of a factor, but you're in town in New Orleans, and if you're staying at a hotel or whatever, you're going to be able to get out of there and have an awesome night. So it's a good road trip is kind of my pitch, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people are planning a trip down there. I'm not sure how many people will sleep on Friday night into, it's a 11 a.m. local kick, obviously, in New Orleans there. So you may see some folks just rolling right out of the party on Friday, right to the game on Saturday, at least from the UCF side. One of the other things that Tulane gets a lot of pub for, at least on Twitter, which I think is pretty cool, they get a lot of pub for their uniforms. A lot of folks have really kind of dug some of the throwback looks and some of the alternate color looks. If you could, for folks who maybe haven't seen them, how would you describe kind of what Tulane's done from a uniform and a branding perspective?
That has been one of the early successes of the rejuvenation of Tulane sports, not just Tulane football, in my opinion. And I say that for a couple of reasons. So just to back things up, I mentioned before, there's this long, very fallow period for Tulane, especially in the 2000s into this decade. And even before we have a new-ish athletic director named Troy Dannon, who, I think the reception for Tulane fans is really positive. I think we're really excited about the hires that he's made in basketball with Ron Hunter, who is a very successful coach at Georgia State. I think we're really seeing the fruits of what Coach Fritz brings to the table. But even before that, one of the things Dannon did was he brought back the Angry Wave. And it's just, in my opinion, one of the coolest logos in college football right now. It really harkens back to the old-timey way that college football used to be, which I think was a little more fun, and I think UCF has done some cool stuff with the moon uniforms and everything, but I have days sometimes where I'm like, I wish they would just roll out the Citronaut. And Tulane they've made it the official brand identity. So you see the Angry Wave on the field, you're going to see it on the helmets. And then on top of that, they've experimented with some color schemes. Like traditionally Tulane is the green wave has always just kind of fallen back on a lot of green, maybe some grays. They've kind of started doing some powder blues that if anyone remembers the Houston Oilers, that resemble some of those uniforms. And it's a cool throwback. And they've got, like you said, a lot of love on Twitter and in national media and everything. And, some of you might be rolling your eyes and saying, well, those are uniforms, but it's something that helps build a brand. And I think even before Tulane started to see a little more success on the field, it gave people something to be proud of. And I think it's a good thing for the university.
Oh, I agree. Like UCF did the same thing in 2016. They completely redid their uniforms, and each week on Twitter, the uniform, they have their own Twitter account. So UCF equipment will release the combo, and people wait around for that. They know what time it comes out, and as soon as it comes out, they're talking about the color combos and the helmet they're using. So, I get that some kind of old time folks may look at that and be like, hey, that doesn't matter. It's what you do between the white lines. I do think that really helps with brand engagement and fan engagement. And then ultimately, you're appealing to 17 and 18-year-old kids and wanting them to go to your school, right? And 17-year-old kids want to wear cool stuff, right? So it's not hard to recognize that how some of that stuff really can help turn a program around.
Oh, I totally agree. And I remember the first year they went back to the Angry Wave. That was the highest selling year in Tulane merchandise to date. And it's funny, you see not Tulane affiliated people, just college football bloggers, they'll come to New Orleans and they're like, where do I buy some Angry Wave stuff? So it's taken on a little bit of a life of its own. But I agree with you. I think that whether you're creating a brand to attract fans or recruits or whatever, that stuff does have some significance. So I think Tulane really hit it out of the park with that sort of deal.
All right, so we'll get you out of here on this question. I don't do predictions because none of us know anything, right? But so finish this sentence for me. If Tulane is going to win this game, they'll have to do blank.
Dude, I'm going to say one thing first. I ask the same question on my podcast every time because you come on and people ask, I'm going to Auburn or Tulane played at Auburn, and they're like, well, make a prediction, right? And we're at least for me, I'm a fan too, and I like this question so much more. Here's what I would say as I look at the matchup for this game. I think that UCF is a chronically underrated team. I mean, people look at the 3 losses and act like UCF is nothing this year. I think those 3 losses were by a collective 7 points, and a couple of breaks go the right way. And this could be yet another UCF team that's, competing to win the East or competing for a high ranking. I do think this is a Tulane team that is much, much improved over what we've seen or what UCF fans may have seen before. So to answer your question, I think the key of this game is going to be all about establishing the running game. I think if Tulane can get off to a quick start, if they can find success getting guys in the open field and missing tackles and giving us the ability to control the clock and not let the UCF offense get on the field and do its thing, I think that's going to be a big decision maker. And if you'll humor me and let me choose a second thing,
sure,
we got to turn around the turnover thing, man. +1 or +2 in turnovers, and I think Tulane's got a good shot to seriously take on one of the better teams in the league. So that's where my head's at right now.
Well, this isn't going to be revolutionary analysis on my part, but the games you reference UCF has lost. We have firmly lost our turnover battle in all of those games. And I think from a UCF standpoint, what we're kind of all looking at and wondering, our 3 losses have come on the road. To your point, they've been close losses, but I would tell you that, the Cincinnati game and the Tulsa game, we probably didn't play anywhere close to what the score represented. Those were pretty sound losses. So we have not had success out of the state of Florida on the road, with the exception of Temple. So there's a lot of folks who are nervous heading down to a Tulane team with a good on-campus environment. Obviously, I'm sure the stadium will be packed, and Tulane's got a talent this year. So I think that turnover piece will be huge because in the games we've struggled, Dylan Gabriel, our freshman quarterback, has had some kind of uncanny turnovers. So not revolutionary analysis, but I agree with you. The turnover battle probably will tell a lot about what happens ultimately in this game on Saturday.
I agree, and it's interesting because I think Tulane and UCF have had some similarities in their season. Tulane is looking to go undefeated at home for the first time since 1998, so more than 20 years. But I think aside from the turnover battle, the other thing from just watching some UCF tape, especially looking at the Tulsa game, Tulsa's fine. They're a competent AAC team this year. UCF shouldn't have lost that game, and the turnovers, I would say, are the highlight or low light or whatever you want to say. But the other thing, too, is just cleaning up the penalties. Mm-hmm. Tulane has also really shot itself in the foot quite a bit on the road, especially with penalties and getting into these 3rd and long situations. I think the other thing that if I'm a Tulane fan that I want to see as a mistake for UCF is that they do kind of come out with that uncharacteristic, maybe a little more undisciplined than what we see at home, because that certainly gives the defense an advantage and lets them, tee up some opportunities.
Well, if you want to learn more about Tulane, follow these guys at Fear the Wave blog on Twitter. Again, also find them at fearthewave.com. JP, you guys do a great job with that whole setup, man. One of the most the premier blogs from a college football standpoint and college sports in general. So we appreciate your coverage. Again, go check them out, learn more about Tulane, and afterwards read the recaps and see what happened. And hopefully we get a chance to catch up at some other point in time. JP, I appreciate you joining us.
Really appreciate that. And as one closing comment, thank you for having us. For any of the UCF people coming to town, have a safe trip in. Remember, in New Orleans, you can take your drink outside of a bar in the street, but you got to pour it in a Go Cup. You can't bring the glass out. Do that right, and you're going to have an awesome time. Everyone have a great time while they're in town, all right?
Awesome. Thanks, JP.
Island H2O Live, a new wave of water park.
Experience the next generation of fun at Island H2O Live. You choose the music. You choose the lighting. And you choose where to share your memorable moments at Florida's newest and most immersive water park.
Island H2O Live.
Now open in Kissimmee, located off US 192 and State Road 429 on Inspiration Boulevard.
Island H2O Live.
All right, again, big thanks to JP from fearthewave.com for his insight on the Tulane program. To get more insight on Tulane, our guy, man on the spot as always, Mr. Trylko, joined the American Coaches Conference call this week and was able to get a few questions into Coach Willie Fritz. Coach Fritz started off his press conference really talking about the challenges of playing UCF, and I'd play that for you, but it's pretty standard stuff. He talks about the speed, talks about the defense, talks about the receivers. And so clearly, Coach Fritz has been studying and knows what he's up against. But let's hear the exchange between our own Trylko and Tulane head coach Willie Fritz.
Yeah, hello, Coach. Running game been strong for you all year. What do you like about the matchup with your running game against UCF defense?
Well, we want to be able to run the ball every week, and that's something that I feel is a big part of our offense, a big part of our team philosophy. They're big up front. They do a good job of slanting one way, coming back and playing the other way, and backers sit well. They're bringing somebody out of the secondary to get an extra guy in the box. And, we're just going to do the same things we do every week. We just got to execute it. We did a poor job last week of just executing some basic run schemes that we've run all season long. We've got to do a better job of that. Certainly got to do a great job of that against UCF and their powerful defense.
And what do you want to see your defense do so it doesn't get beat by UCF's true freshman quarterback, Dylan Gabriel?
We get lined up. They go fast. They're one of the fastest tempo teams in the country, and we got to get lined up quickly, and we got to have enough variety in our package that we're not just doing the same thing. We're getting lined up each time. But I think a big thing is to get lined up and have your eyes where they need to be. After a big play, they're going to really tempo you, and sometimes they'll look to the sideline and slow it down a little bit. But for the most part, they're going pretty darn quick.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thanks to Trace and Coach Willie Fritz for that time and that exchange. Obviously, don't let Coach Fritz fool you. His attack is very much a running based attack, and you heard that from JP. UCF Michael joined me in just a minute to recap more about that rushing attack, but that's a big part of the offense for Tulane. Getting that running attack started clearly will help to open up the passing game, and so you will see a stable of running backs. If you all thought UCF had a stable of running backs that they use that are productive, Tulane is certainly in the same ilk and may have even a few more guys that they trot out there than we do currently. So definitely interesting to see what happens there. And I think the interesting part about what he talked about is on the defensive side is just getting lined up. I mean, that could certainly just be coach speak and not wanting to give away too much about what it is that they want to do. But look, the reality is that we haven't played Tulane in 3 seasons here, so since 2016, and even at that point, it was a different offense. It was Coach Frost and his offense. So we have familiarity with schools like Temple and Cincinnati and schools that we played. So they've seen us play year over year, and they can scheme up their defense a little bit because their teams have experience and they know what to expect. But this will be the first time we've seen a Tulane team. So I'm definitely curious to see if the speed and tempo will get to them. Again, you have to tip your hat to the teams we've played earlier this season and kind of how they D'd us up. Now, again, Tulsa was another team we hadn't played in a while, and they D'd us up really well too. So that certainly will be an interesting side of the ball to see what takes place. But as always, our thanks to Trace Trylko for getting some comments from the opposing coach. Coming up next, UCF Mike, star of the Sons of UCF show, will join me to give you 5 things you need to know about Tulane. Stay tuned.
Oviedo Brewing Company is the hottest microbrewery in Central Florida. Located 7 miles from UCF at the Oviedo Mall, this 8,800 square foot brewery just opened its doors 6 months ago and has already crafted 13 unique beer flavors and counting in their tap room. The tap room contains different styles of beverages, including ciders, wines, and craft sodas. Not only do they have amazing beers, they also have a full kitchen with gourmet pizzas, wings, and tacos. Oviedo Brewing has activities for each day of the week, such as Taco Tuesdays, Trivia Wednesdays, Pizza and Pint on Thursdays, plus live music on Friday and Saturday evening. But the best is Sunday brunch with unlimited beer mimosas. Need a spot for game day? Oviedo Brewing is just the place with their large TVs to catch all the live games. You will also find Oviedo Brewing at UCF tailgating sampling beers. And OBC support for the Knights doesn't stop there. If you need a spot for UCF away games, come to Oviedo Brewing Company. You can get all the details on their Instagram or Facebook page. Follow them at Oviedo Brewing CO. Download the Untapped app, and you can find out what beers are on tap. The food menu is also available on their website, oviedobrewingco.com.
All right, the best part of the show, the star of the Sons of UCF podcast, only on the Knightline Sports Network. That would be one UCF Mike, and he is back for another week to get you primed and prepped for our upcoming opponent. It's Tulane, of course, this week. And so you heard about what they do well on the field, all that good jazz. But Mike and I have been scouring the internet for things that you probably don't know about Tulane, and we're going to share those with you now. So, Mike, how you feeling, buddy? A couple days out from the game. You feeling good?
Yeah, feel great. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'll be even better once we get some of these facts read, because these are some really hard-hitting pieces of information. So I will kick us off with the first thing that you must know about Tulane, and here it is. This is the 9th time that UCF and Tulane have actually played each other. UCF leads the series 6-2. Last time we faced these guys, 2016, which was a 37-6 win by UCF. However, we are only 2-2, so 500 when playing Tulane in New Orleans, and there were victories in 2010 and 2001. Mike, you might remember that 2010 game. It was memorable because it was a 49-0 shutout, punctuated by a 100-yard interception return from friend of the show, Jordan Ozerites, on one of the very last plays of the game. Other interesting fact, Mike, this is only the second time UCF will play in Tulane's new on-campus stadium, which is called Ullman Stadium. It's a 30,000-seat stadium, a little smaller, more intimate than when they played at the Superdome. That opened in 2014, so we played there in 2015, and obviously we lost all of them that year, Mike. So a revenge game and a chance to break over 500 in New Orleans coming up here this weekend.
Yeah, I know we lost the one game in Ullman Stadium in 2015, but it's definitely better watching a game played there than in the Superdome. In the Superdome, it was nobody ever at those games. At least it seemed like. That place is so big, and I think it always had more fans than them at that place, and it just looked sad on the TV. It was really cool when we saw Ozerites returning at 49-0 to end the game. And he told us the story that if he didn't score that touchdown, then I think O'Leary would have been mad at him.
Yeah.
But since he scored, it was okay because the clock was already expired.
Yeah, it looks like a cool little stadium, too. It's only like 30,000 plus seating. Obviously, they can expand it. So it's one of these kind of smaller stadiums, but if the students are there and they're going to pack it, I think UCF's going to travel well for this game. A lot of people, see the opportunity to go down and hang out in New Orleans for a weekend in Bourbon Street and probably take advantage of it. So should be hopefully a good-sized crowd. Hopefully plenty of UCF contingent will be there as well.
Yeah, and it's right in the middle of a neighborhood, I think, too. So I don't know if there's much parking. I think you're probably better off getting some Ubers in the game or something for the people that are heading out there. So
take the Uber.
Have fun. All right, thing number 2. Tulane, as we know, is known as the Green Wave. That name dates back to the 1920s. Prior to that, the school was known as the Olive and Blue, which were the official school colors. In 1986, Tulane went through a redesign and created a mascot that bared a close resemblance to the cartoon character Gumby. In 1998, Gumby was replaced with a new pelican-looking mascot, and the student body voted and selected a name to name the mascot Pecker.
I'm sorry,
I
what?
didn't know that.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. They named him Pecker, as in Woody Woodpecker.
Oh, okay.
However, the administration instead decided to name the mascot Riptide.
I wonder why.
Tulane later announced in 2017 that they would adopt an angry wave logo as their primary look, and with the Block T wave logo becoming their secondary logo. And in case you're curious, the official school colors are now dark green, Kelly green, and blue.
A lot to unpack there. I kind of want to go back to Pecker, but I'll stay away from that one for right now. A lot of people think Tulane has like the best uniforms or one of the best uniforms in college football. Those colors together are pretty cool. They do throw a pretty good set together at times. I don't understand the angry wave. I don't understand Riptide. I kind of like the Gumby thing. They got a lot going on there, Tulane, but they're typically thought of as one of the better uniformed schools in the country.
Yeah, they look nice. But the mascot itself, a green wave, is kind of weird. I mean, we've already played against a golden hurricane, and now we've got a green wave coming up next. And the name Pecker, I wonder how many people voted on that name. What were the other choices? That's what I'd like to know.
I actually, that's out there in the article. I actually read that. But I just going to imagine, like, the students came in front of the school. Okay, President Smith, on behalf of the student body, I do want to announce that we have formally decided that we support the name Pecker for the mascot. And President Smith's like, well, we're going to have to take a vote on that. Let's just, can we table this for after lunch? And then all of a sudden, like a week later, it was Riptide. I don't know.
Yeah, as far as they go with Tallywhackers.
Yeah, well, there's always time for a rebrand. All right. So here's more about Tulane. Their head coach is a guy named Willie Fritz, and he's been at the helm since 2016. Before that, he coached at Georgia Southern, Sam Houston State, and Central Missouri. He is only 22-25 at Tulane, including a 6-4 record this season, where Tulane has losses to Auburn, Memphis, and Navy before losing to Temple this past weekend. On the season, Tulane is averaging 459 yards of offense with 34 points a game. Fritz runs an up-tempo option style of offense. Defensively, they're pretty solid. They've only given up 368 yards a game, holding opponents to 25 points a game. However, both UCF and Tulane are behind in the turnover margin. UCF is -1 and Tulane is -3, which probably means, Mike, that as most games go, whoever takes care of the ball will win the game.
That is always a key, especially for us this year and on the road. And it's pretty disappointing that we're -1 in turnovers. And last year we were so good. This year, not so much. But Tulane somehow has managed to be worse. They're -3. And giving up 368 yards a game, we've had halves where we've had more than that. So hopefully we can be able to put up over 400 or 500 yards and get a nice victory this week.
Amen to that.
All right. Thing number 4 you need to know. The Tulane offense is led by quarterback Justin McMillan, who has thrown 13 touchdowns so far this season, and that goes along with a 58% completion percentage. McMillan also has 10 interceptions on the year. And you're going to see him run the ball because he leads the team in rushing and rushing touchdowns. He's got 672 yards and 12 touchdowns. Corey Dauphine and Darius Bradwell also get a good amount of carries. But they have 6 players with over 40 carries and over 200 yards rushing on the season. So they got a nice little combination of running backs there. If they're going to throw the ball, it's going to be to Darnell Mooney, Jalen McCleskey, and Amari Jones, most likely. And on defense, you want to look out for safety P.J. Hall, defensive end Patrick Johnson, and on special teams, their punter, Ryan Wright, is only averaging 38 yards per punt. So hopefully maybe we can get a nice special teams play in there to go our way, maybe Otis with a nice return, and that can be a big play in the game.
38 yards doesn't seem good.
No. The No, it does not.
This McMillan scares me, though. Obviously, he can throw the ball a little bit. He's a top runner. So obviously, keeping him under wraps would be a really good thing. Curious to see how Randy Shannon defenses this. Does he put a spy on him throughout the game? Is this a Nate Evans, Eric Mitchell, Eric Gilliard kind of play spy on him? How much do we want to pressure the quarterback knowing he can run? Really curious to see what Randy Shannon's going to dial up facing kind of a really true dual threat mobile quarterback that really is the spark of the entire Tulane offense.
Yeah, the one game I really watched was the game against Houston he had earlier in the year, and he looked pretty good in that one. But anytime they've played a decent team, they have not won. They lost the Auburn game, which actually they played pretty tough, and then they lost Memphis and Navy, and Temple took care of them this week. So hopefully we should be able to do the same.
All right, last thing you need to know about Tulane. They have an interesting football history, Mike. Did you know Tulane was actually a member of the SEC Conference from 1932 to 1966? I actually did not know that. Did you know that?
I knew they were in the SEC. I didn't know the years. I have heard they were in the SEC.
Well, in their time, Mike, they actually won 3 SEC football championships in 1934, 1939, and 1949. That means that their 3 titles in the SEC are actually more than current members Kentucky, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Missouri, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. Actually, it would be all those schools combined because Kentucky has 2. I think Mississippi State had 1 maybe. And so their 3 titles rank more than all of those teams right there. There's more about Tulane, though. They joined Conference USA in 1995, and they stayed afloat for the next few seasons. However, after 2003, it was revealed that the university president, a guy by the name of Scott Cowan, and the board of trustees held discussions about actually abandoning the football program or downgrading them to Division III. They were concerned about being able to compete in the new BCS era and thought maybe downgrading or eliminating the program would be in the best interest. There was a revolt. Everybody was upset. So they decided to backtrack and then pour some more money into the program. But another unfortunate moment for them came in 2005. Hurricane Katrina came, and obviously Tulane is situated right in the heart of New Orleans. They played their games at the Superdome prior to that, so they were forced to play their entire 2005 football schedule away from home. So all their home games are actually at other stadiums inside of Louisiana, and they played a bunch of road games as well. Ultimately, they went 2-9 on the season. So Tulane has seen some things, Mike, in the college football world.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. 1932, they were in the SECs. Almost 100 years of football. I don't know when they actually started football, but maybe even over that. But, yeah, a lot of history. And it's a cool city to go to if you're going to New Orleans this week. I've actually never been, but I wish it would be this would be one of the ones I would like to go to. The game's at 12 o'clock. So and it's actually 11 o'clock local time. It's going to be an early one out there. I don't know. You have a good feeling about this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on our offensive line play. I think the 2 keys for us is can we protect Gabriel, give him time to make plays, give him the right reads and whatnot, and then defensively, how do we slow McMillan down? I think he's obviously going to be the sort of the main cog of that offense. So I'm curious how we slow him down. What do we do defensively? But typically, I guess, Mike, this is a cliche, but these games, come down to line play. Can we control the line of scrimmage on offense, run the ball effectively, give Gabriel some time to throw, and will Heupel, stop running 19 straight bubble screens there, and B, can we keep McMillan contained and keep this rushing game intact? If we do those 2 things, I like our chances.
Yeah, traditionally we've had trouble with running quarterbacks, so that's going to be the key to the game for sure on defense.
Well, either way, I guess we'll figure it all out, and you can hear Mike and I next week on the Sons of UCF breaking down the entire game. But until then, buddy, I'll talk to you then, man. Thanks as always for hopping on and joining us for Knightline Extra.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. Charge on. Talk to you later.
You've heard us talk about the great food at our good friend Kyle Israel's restaurant, the Little Greek Fresh Grill. The Little Greek now has franchises available. Please call 407-697-2272. That's 407-697-2272 to see what the Little Greek can do for you. Also, check out the Little Greek's newest location at 6536 Old Brick Road in Windermere, Florida. The Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous.
All right, this will bring another edition of Knightline Extra, the Tulane edition, to a close. My thanks to everybody who collaborated with me on the show this evening. First and foremost, JP from fearthewave.com. Again, find him on Twitter at fearthewaveblog. Those guys do tremendous work out there, so you should definitely check them out. Pre-game to learn more about Tulane, even post-game to get their perspective on what happened. As always, Trylko takes some time to hop on the AAC Coaches Conference call and provides us those sound clips. So thanks to Trace and Willie Fritz, obviously, by extension as well. And as always, my partner in crime on the Sons of UCF, Mr. UCF Mike, joins us to give us 5 interesting, fun, weird, odd, whatever you want to call them, facts or things that you need to know about our upcoming opponent. Before we go, allow me again to plug all of the great things that happen here as a part of the Knightline Sports Network. Again, we're your exclusive home for UCF coverage pretty much 5 days a week. Let me recap for you what that looks like. Monday morning, Sunday night, if you will get the Knightline flagship show with Andrew and Trace. Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, you will get Sons UCF with myself and UCF Mike. Wednesday and Thursday, you will get the AAC report with Jeff Allen. Friday, Thursday, you will get this Knightline Extra. And then on Sunday morning, 9 a.m., ESPN Radio 580, Andrew Phegley and a host of characters, Ben Stout, Knight Bengal, Kyle Israel. You never know who you're going to get. So tune in to the morning after, exclusively found on ESPN Radio 580. Make sure to follow the channel here at UCF_Knightline. Follow Sons of UCF as well at Sons of UCF. Make sure you follow Jeff Allen on Twitter as well. As always, whatever happens, you can count on all of us to be back next week to break that all down for you. Until then, make sure you have a safe and fun time if you're going down to New Orleans. If you're not going down to New Orleans, get in front of your TV, root the Knights on, and we'll be back next week to recap what happened. From all the good folks at the Knightline Sports Network, until next time, go Knights. Charge on.